All right, hello and welcome to our Chill Bible stream. We are taking a look at the book of Numbers today. We left off, finished Numbers chapters 1 through 3. We're going through this nifty Bible reading plan that you can find in the description with the Bible resources link. And yeah, it's a cool plan. I'm doing it myself, and it's keeping me on track to read the Bible in 3 years at the slowest. And yeah, we were just talking about the different orientation of the tribes and like physical location. Now we're talking about the duties of the different groups of priests. So feel free to follow along in Numbers chapter 4 is where we're at right now. Or hey, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if you want to chat live, you can join on Zoom by scanning the QR code, or there's a link in the description for that as well. So let's jump into it. Hey Brian, how's it going? How are you doing this fine Monday? Disappointed in myself, but I always say the same thing. I need to get my stuff together. Why do you say that? recently I haven't been living for Jesus Christ, living for the world. If I died today, I would go to hell. I just need to get right with God, and sin is so addicting. Man, I'm sorry to hear that you're wrestling with that. I can't imagine like what specifically like you're going through. Man, let's be honest, it's tough living for Jesus, right? Lust. Yeah. It seems appealing, right? It's one of those things where it's kind of like a bait and switch, you know? It feels good, it seems good, and then oftentimes you're left with kind of like that moment of clarity and regret afterward, and it's just like, what am I doing? And so like I'm kind of reminded of two things. I mean, the story of Adam and Eve, right? They take the fruit and they decide what's best for themselves rather than listening to God. But we see it kind of like more practically, like the wrestling with the story of Cain and Abel. And God tells Cain, like, hey, sin is crouching at your door. You need to rule over it. Just like Adam and Eve were meant to rule over the garden and the creatures, and Eve let the snake deceive her, and Adam also was there. Yeah, at no point does the Bible ever say, like, yep, it's easy, right? It says that we need to be the ones who rule and take control over the things that we feel like lust, that might seem good, but then in hindsight, or from God's perspective and all wisdom, there's something much better, you know. I struggled with that as well, and I was fortunate enough to meet someone, and I haven't struggled with it nearly as much since, because I like have someone that I love and care about, and that love kind of helps me rule over any other feelings that I feel. This is a Bible verse I can relate to, Romans 7:19. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Yeah. Paul went through some stuff, and we don't get the full picture in his writing, but we can tell that he definitely struggled a lot. And that's a really cool Bible verse that you picked out, because I think a lot of people might just go to Bible verses that say, like, this is wrong, this is bad, don't do it, basically. But I think it's kind of short-sighted to say that we don't struggle with it at all, or things at all. I mean, and everyone's struggle is different, right? But it's not about being perfect all the time. It's about living faithfully to God. You know, it's even when we're wrestling with these things and we do the evil that we do not want to do, understanding that our first allegiance is to God, and we're going to do whatever we need to do to make things right with him and stay on track and have people keep us accountable, and do whatever we can to put things like that behind us. Because sin is in our nature, right? But the things that we do, that's just things that make us guilty, right? How did I meet Jesus? So my parents were Christian, and for a lot of people, that's kind of like where the story ends. But for me, I was dragged along to church as a kid, didn't really want to go, ended up spending a lot of my time just like hanging out outside of the church because I didn't really want to go in. And decided, you know what, I'm not going to believe this just because my parents believe it. Like, I refuse. And decided to just live life and go out into the world and do the things that I wanted to do and make the mistakes I needed to make before I kind of came back full circle and said, you know, maybe I believe this because I believe it. And I've done enough wandering and exploring and to realize that I'm not just doing this because my parents want this for me. Oh, could I repeat what I said? Yeah, no worries. I grew up in the church. My parents were Christian, but I didn't want to be Christian just because they were Christian. And so I went out and lived my own life and didn't go to church. And when I was dragged along to church, I just hung out outside of the church. And then eventually I came back full circle and was confident, like, hey, you know, I think this is what I believe and not just what my parents believe. And actually I came back much stronger in my faith because of that, because it wasn't just like a Sunday school level faith. I had gone out, lived life, made mistakes, and come back and realized, like, yeah, any way that I try to live my life feels unnecessarily difficult, and I keep trying and failing, and you know, life doesn't really get easier, but it's helpful to have a guide, and who better to guide you through life than the one who created life, right? And so eventually, as a teenager, I was super anxious about it. I had really bad social anxiety, but I decided to go to my church's youth group one night, and I walked in, and this like defining moment for me was when the youth pastor at the church remembered my name, and we had barely interacted, right? Only in the times where I was forced to be there had we interacted, and only in group settings. And so the fact that he remembered my name was really telling, and made me feel like, okay, maybe this is a place that I could belong. And it was still a very long road from there, but that's kind of the cliff notes of kind of what led to me meeting Jesus, and then decided to go to summer camp, and was just kind of not even the first year, but the second year that I went, I decided to get baptized, and I felt like God was calling me to be a pastor. And that was that was scary for someone who was pretty new in his faith at that point. But I mean, here I am today, right? Studying the Bible on a live stream. But yeah, that's just a bit of my story. Let's see. I was raised Catholic, but never really knew Jesus, and got baptized when I was 14, just because I thought that baptism helped me get saved so I could go to heaven. And then around 22 or 23, I had a supernatural experience with Jesus. From that moment, I tried seeking who Jesus was, and when I knew more of Jesus, I became Christian, not Catholic, and I knew more of Jesus. I'm really glad to hear that. It sounds like we have kind of similar stories, kind of needing to experience who Jesus is on our own. That's really cool. I think there's a decent amount that we can actually learn from Catholicism, but there's also a lot of baggage. And if there's one thing that I don't do, is baggage, right? I want to leave all that behind and just focus on the things that Jesus would want us to focus on. But yeah, I've had a couple of those supernatural experiences that really helped to affirm like I was on the right path, and especially when I was at low points. I feel like I could hear God speaking to me more clearly and convicting me that something was wrong, or after I'd already done something wrong, picking me back up again and helping me metaphorically dust myself off and get back on a good path, you know. Yeah. What's been your experience with Catholicism versus Christianity? Because that's an interesting switch that I've actually seen a lot of people make. My wife included, actually, was initially as a kid went to Catholic church with her family, and then they decided to start going to a Christian church for a youth group, and then eventually the whole family moved over to a Christian church, but still has very significant Catholic roots. So I'm curious what your experience is there. But yeah, the idea that baptism helps you get saved is false. And it sounds like you had already come to that conclusion, but there are people that say, like, you need to get baptized to get saved. And I've encountered some interesting religious groups, to put it nicely, that believe that, and then also believe other things that were much more complicated. But there's something that I believe is called, like, baptism of the heart, and that's that moment that it's like, yeah, I recognize that I want to live life differently and I want to follow Jesus, and that's like the baptism of the heart. I feel like most people that are Catholics, they never know about their religion, and they think that to get saved you need to do good works, and they don't believe that we're saved by grace is a thing. Yeah, that's a big thing that I've encountered as well. There's no amount of good works that can get you into heaven, and I think that's how people see the Bible, honestly. Is like, hey, here's this moral list of things, and if you're a good person, then you go to heaven. When, like, the morality aspect of the Bible is secondary. We often put it first and say, like, yeah, like, Jesus died so that you can live a new life doing good things, because everything that you did before was bad. Which is not 100% wrong, right? But it's also not the point. The point is that Jesus lived before he died. He didn't just die, and he taught us a whole bunch of stuff about what the kingdom of heaven looks like, and he invited us into it to say, this is what a good life looks like, and if you follow my guidance, then you'll live a good life in accordance with the way that God created the world to work. And if everyone does this, then we have peace on earth, basically. But he also understood that peace on earth is not really going to be a thing as long as humans could make the decisions that they want to make, and hurt people and harm people and do crazy things. Want to know my testimony on how I had a supernatural encounter with Jesus? Yes. Yeah. Type away. Feel free. I would love to hear it. So all the morality stuff comes secondary. Jesus is inviting us into a better way of living life. And he says that the kingdom of heaven is here now. It's not like Jesus died a long time ago so that he could come back a long time from now. Jesus is working and doing things now to show that he is Lord over all creation. And I know that in my life it's been a lot easier following that guidance, and understanding that there's grace when I don't live up to the moral parts, and there was grace for the people of Israel when they didn't live up to the moral guidance that God had for them. Like, God works with broken people, and he seeks to make us more whole, right? But of course that's a journey with the Holy Spirit working through us. And then ultimately, when Jesus returns, we'll have full restoration and reconciliation, and all things will be made whole again. I already have my testimony written down since I don't want to forget about my story. That's great. Love that. And I kind of have it as a backup. And also some people have asked me for my testimony. So yeah, let me share it with you. Cool. Love it. I had mine written down at one point. I don't know if I have it anywhere anymore, but I think I've just gotten better over the years at telling it more succinctly. All right, let's look at this. Okay, when I chose the white light, I knew it was God at that moment. When that happened, I pretty much collapsed on the floor. And I was like brand new mind, new thinking. Cool. But later on, I started not believing what happened to me. That's fair. I thought that what happened was because of the drugs and not actually God. Yeah, fair consideration. And went back into the world. Later on, YouTube started recommending me videos about Jesus. I started watching Cliff Netchell videos. Good guy, really smart, incredibly smart. He gave me so much evidence for the existence of God and evidence on why Jesus is the truth. And from that moment, I started believing in God, Jesus again. That's awesome. Love that. Cliff is, man, he is so educated. The fact that he can just kind of like take in these criticisms and critiques of Christianity and then just like respond so eloquently in the moment is such like a spiritual gift and such like a God-given skill. It's so impressive. And for the most part, I agree with the things that he has to say. And I think he does it in a way that's very non-judgmental, and I think that's the key and something that separates him from a lot of other people who go to college campuses to debate, is that non-judgment piece. And he's just there to talk about Jesus, nothing else. I think God had to show himself the way he did when I was doing drugs, because back then I was so unsure if God existed. If he gave me all the evidence in the world, I wouldn't believe. I think a lot of people are like that. I was actually just talking with someone yesterday who said he likes to ask the question, like, if God came down right now and stood in front of you, would you believe in him? And the person that he was talking to paused. And he was like, that's all I need to know. Like, if you're not open to the possibility of God, then what are we doing here, right? Why are we debating this, right? If you're only interested in being cemented in your own perspective, right? So we need that openness, is the point. Yeah, so I think God was like, I gotta show him in a supernatural way for him to believe. Yeah, it's kind of like what happened with Paul on that wasn't the road to Damascus, was it? Am I tripping? Yeah, okay, road to Damascus. What's the other one I'm thinking of? It's in the book of Acts. Emmaus. Okay. I almost got Damascus and Emmaus mixed up. It's tough when they're not streets that you have literally walked on. And they're long roads. Okay. Anyway. Sorry, tangent. Yeah, so God showed up in a supernatural way. Yeah, and then Paul still, after he had that supernatural experience, he went to someone and he spent a long time, I believe years, wrestling with what he believed. Yeah. Start reading where it says, "Here's my testimony." I thought I did. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed it. Yeah. So here's the beginning part. Here's my testimony. Before in my life, I was doing this specific drug. I was really high, and pretty much after a while, I saw two lights. One was white, and the other one was red. Oh, okay. Got you. I see why you want me to go back. The white light was in the right, and the red light was in the left. You're pretty much told, and pretty much no one told me, but instantly I knew I had to choose the light, and instantly knew it was God or the world. That's good. Yeah, so you had that supernatural experience, and then God kind of followed it up with those videos from Cliff. Shout out to the YouTube algorithm for for putting those videos in front of you, and cool that they reached you so well. Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Not just for live stream purposes, but it's just always encouraging to hear stories like that, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I mean, how has that that journey been for you? Like, between the world and God, that choice that you made, how have you been doing with that since then? Is my question. Because I believe it's a journey. I don't think we're just instantly like flip switch. Now we're robots that can follow all of God's commands perfectly, right? That's what Adam and Eve wanted. They wanted the shortcut to wisdom. And God wanted to impart upon them wisdom slowly. When I saw God, I couldn't see him. All I saw was this beautiful white light. But like I said, when I chose him, I collapsed on the floor. It felt beautiful. Yeah. Can you repeat the question you asked again? Yeah, just that choice that you made between God and the world, the white light and the red light. Like, how has that journey been for you since then? I actually had a very similar supernatural experience. I used to struggle heavily with insomnia. And I just had a real rough night where I was not sleeping. And then I started to just feel like I was in so much pain, so much that like my body was all tensed up, basically like convulsing, and just totally, all the muscles activated. I was so tense, and then I saw this white light, and I felt like peace and rest. And I don't remember what happened after that. I think I fell asleep, which is what I needed in that moment. But I just remember being really relaxed and really at peace. And then just knowing, like you said, that was God. So those supernatural experiences, they come up every so often. Like I said at first, I stopped believing in God because I thought what happened was because of the drug, yeah. But like I said, later I realized all of it was true. I mean, I don't think a drug would let me see what I saw and experience. Yeah, you never know. But I think whenever we have those supernatural experiences and we feel the presence of God moving, something that's really helpful is to just look for confirmation somewhere, right? When the Bible talks about how to identify a false prophet, right? They just simply say, like, well, did their prophecy come true, right? Did what they predicted would be the outcome of the situation actually happen, right? And I think for us today, it's like, okay, we think we heard from God or saw God, but then is there something in our life or from someone else that confirms that was true? And I think you coming across that YouTube stuff again is another prompting to say, like, hey, remember that experience that you had? Well, I'm following up. I see we've drifted a little bit. Let me kind of nudge you back in the right direction. I want to check out these videos. Yeah, the supernatural stuff can be tricky, especially when we're under the influence, for you, of the drug that you were on. For me, it was insomnia, and so like sleep deprivation can make you like see things, experience things, but I also believe that God can work through that. I don't often talk about like supernatural experiences unless other people bring it up, because some denominations have a lot of baggage surrounding those things. And so I kind of just wait and feel out whether to talk about it or not. Some denominations are like, no, we only trust in God's word. We are the town from Footloose. We do no singing and dancing, no instruments. We'll do hymns, right? Hymns without music, without instruments. And the Holy Spirit works through God's word primarily. And then there's denominations on the other end that's like, the Holy Spirit will teach us how to read God's word. We don't really need to be super educated in how to read it for ourselves. We can just flip to a random page and God will give us wisdom, and it will be guided by the Holy Spirit in understanding. What denomination are you? I'm non-denominational Christian. The church that I go to is non-denominational. I consider myself a-denominational, which is a term that I made up, and I'm secretly hoping will catch on. But I am, for all intents and purposes, non-denominational. But the key difference is that I believe that denominations are actually doing more harm than good in the American church. And I really emphasize church unity. And so when I talk about like reading the Bible without the baggage, right? What I'm talking about is all of like the denominational rules, secondary theology, and church tradition that's unhelpful that we just do because it's the way that we've always done it. That's the stuff that I'm like, let's leave that at the door, and let's just focus on what Jesus calls us to. And let's read the Old Testament to understand where Jesus is coming from, and the culture that he's coming from. But also not pick up all that Old Testament baggage as well, because that's a different culture and a different time. And let's also understand the culture that's happening in the New Testament. And for the apostles and disciples of Jesus and the people who wrote those letters, and the churches that received them and the people that received them, like what was going on there, so that we're not just copy and pasting theology that wasn't intended for us, right? The Bible is writing about Israel for the most part when it comes to the Old Testament, and then the New Testament is all people writing letters, and so we're only getting half of the conversation, and it wasn't written to us, and the things in there aren't necessarily intended for us, but there's wisdom that we can gain from it. We just have to understand that we're a completely different culture here in America, and we're 2,000 years displaced from it. So we have to do a lot of work to understand what's going on there, so that we don't pick up unnecessary baggage. If you see a painting, you know there must have been a painter. A painting doesn't paint itself. Yeah. If you see a building, you know there is a builder. A building doesn't build itself. So how could the universe, something infinitely more complex, exist without a creator? Life comes from life. Life cannot come from non-life. When you have seen nature and everything be created by nothing, I'm not saying that there was nothing at the start, and there was something at the start. Oh, there was something at the start that was God. But atheists believe in the scientific impossibility that nothing created everything. Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. I think there's a few ways that you could look at this, right? I think what a lot of people want is certainty. And I think a lot of the reason that the creation story in Genesis clashes with science is because we tried to make the Bible a science book. And it's just not. And the Bible has a lot of history in it. It's also not primarily a history book. What we are reading is typically narrative, and then poetry, and then something called prose discourse, which is basically just them talking about how they see the world. And and so we get some historical events along there with it, and we travel through the history of Israel throughout the narrative. But the Bible is there to show us, or the Old Testament is there to show us how the people of Israel thought, and the writing that was important to them. And the way that they saw the world was very different. Do you know what's a theist? I do know, but I want to know if you do. Yeah, a theist is someone who believes in God. It's the opposite of an atheist. Yeah. Cool. Gold star. Yeah. Yeah, so what we're seeing is a poetic account in Genesis. And so any science that comes along that says, like, yeah, we can confidently say that this happened, it's like, cool, like, but how does that work? Like, you believe that there was a point and that gravity started to coalesce the earth, and that there was a big bang, and over millions of years life evolved. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, but who made gravity work that way? Why does gravity just do it, right? Why, if I know the truth and know about the Word of God, why do I choose the world rather than Jesus? It truly makes no sense. All right. Well, if you're willing, let me just throw something out there and let me know if this connects with you or not. Why do I choose the world rather than Jesus? Because that's what humanity is, right? When Adam and Eve, they choose what they want to seize wisdom for themselves in the Garden of Eden, rather than trusting that God will provide them with wisdom as they grow and mature. That becomes a template for pretty much every story throughout the Bible. And any story that doesn't really fit that pattern is typically an inversion of that, where it's like someone sees something and they're like, wait, that's not good. Or they see it, they deem it to be good, and then it's like, well, actually, wait, I'm going to trust God. And so it's detailing human struggle. Like, and when we look at, like, we just finished, not on the live stream, but we finished talking about the book of Exodus and Leviticus. And when Israel would make offerings to God, they would give peace offerings out of thanksgiving for who God is. They would make guilt offerings whenever they did something wrong. And the third type is they made sin offerings. And so they saw sin as separate from guilt. They saw that sin was just the state that humanity is in. And so, like I said, when God talks to Cain, he says to rule over it, right? And so we're constantly being pulled in that direction of doing whatever is right in our eyes. But following Jesus means that we're also now allowing ourselves to be pulled in this other direction of what God deems to be right and Jesus deems to be right. Hebrews says, "For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment." Let me read that again. After receiving the knowledge of truth. Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things at play here, right? You can go the extreme route and say people who have heard the word of God and just completely reject it, and they say, I want to keep living life the way that I have lived life. Then they're rejecting the invitation that Jesus is extending, and that's their decision, right? The other way to look at this is like the prodigal son who goes out and decides he's going to live life on his own and live life how he deems right, but then comes back, right? Is the sacrifice and resurrection of Jesus not then applicable to him as well? Even though he walked away, he made bad decisions, he hurt people, right? He's welcomed back in. And it's actually the Pharisees who are being criticized in that parable, because they're the older brother who's like, why are you allowing him back in? Haven't I done everything right? And I think it's those people, the ones who are so on their high horse about religion, that are going to be judged more harshly. And I think there's people who just, they take that same amount of arrogance just in the opposite direction, right? And they reject God. And so there's a lot of nuance to the Bible, right? The Bible is supposed to help us inform our Christian worldview. And pulling a couple of verses out can, be misguiding if we don't understand the full picture of what's happening. Because yes, it's true, but it's just not the whole puzzle, right? It's just one piece. Let's see. You know what? I don't think it's fair, but at the same time, I think it's understandable. If you believe your whole life that your religion is the correct one, and then on Judgment Day, God tells you didn't follow the truth, that would be really hard, because everyone is seeking the truth. But at the same time, I also think it's fair, because I feel like God wouldn't make all things and all religions the right path to heaven. That's why we have to study and try to find truth so we can go to heaven with God. Yeah, and I think like heaven comes down to us, right? That's what we see in Revelation, is that Jesus brings heaven down to, like, God brought his presence down to Israel. Jesus brought the presence of God down to humanity. And then when Jesus returns, he'll bring the kingdom of heaven with him, right? And so we're not just abandoning the creation project, right? But God wants collaborators, people who care for the earth and creation and will live in harmony. You don't want people on your group project who don't want to be there, right? Like, okay, like we'll just go off and we'll do the group project ourselves. It's tough. And Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. So he's clear. There's one path. And I think we try to make it black and white sometimes, which I think is unfair, to say that, like, Christianity is right, all the rest are wrong. And it's like, okay, well, let's think about it like a target. Christianity is the bullseye because it has Jesus and an understanding of who Jesus is and what he did and what he stood for and the way that he creates. I think other religions, when it comes to the morality, when it comes to seeking truth, when it comes to looking for understanding and belonging, might hit somewhere on the target, right? But it's not the bullseye. That's the way that that I see it, at least, right? Only Jesus is going to be the bullseye. Only Jesus is going to be the path forward. And I don't see a world where God is excluding people who didn't get a fair chance to know about him. But we don't know what happens after we die, right? And we don't know what's going to happen largely when Jesus returns. We know some of it, right? But we don't know exactly what God is doing. But we can see in his character forgiveness and opportunity to leave our baggage behind and just walk forward with Jesus. If I had God in front of me, I would want to ask him this question, but at the same time it feels silly because God is eternal and has no beginning. Essentially, I'd ask if he remembers his very beginning, but since that doesn't make sense, since he never had a beginning, how could he remember a start that never existed? What about you? Would you ask Jesus? Oh, what would you ask Jesus if you had him in front of you? I would just ask him what I've missed. I'm doing my best to live faithfully to Jesus and leave church baggage behind me and to help other people do the same. And I'm trying to read the Bible in the way of the people who were writing it. But I can only do so much to see outside of my own perspective. And the baggage that's hardwired into me with how I've lived my life so far, how I was raised, right? And so I'm going to have blind spots. And I would just ask Jesus what those blind spots are so that I can just more faithfully follow him. Like, what am I getting wrong? Because I want to faithfully represent him. Represent him well and accurately, right? I think that's what I would ask. Is that your question? If God remembers his beginning, or is there another question that you would ask God or Jesus? One thing I always ask myself is, what does the mind of God look like? How does he think? What does he like? Obviously, if he has God's mind, he will die because it would be too much information for a human brains. But if we have the possibility to think like God and not die, that would be really interesting. Yeah. What does the mind of God look like? If we had God's mind, we would die because it would be too much information. Yeah. Yeah, even if we want to think about it scientifically, right? I think it's fair to think of God as like a fourth or fifth dimensional being, right? Because we just can't comprehend God fully. Like, we can't see infrared. We can't see UV rays, right? But I imagine like God can see all that. God can see time, right? He sees the beginning and he sees the end. He sees all of creation as it has been and as it will be. and we're taking the long way around. Yeah, I think it would be overwhelming. I think it would literally blow our minds if we truly got to see what God sees. I mean, in the book of Job, right, for instance, Job is likely like a Hebrew thought experiment. It's a compilation of TED Talks about who God might be in response to Job's suffering, right? To address the question, like, what does it look like to be righteous? And Job does that up until the very end, because any human who is not Jesus is going to break. And Job cries out to God, and God and he tells God, he curses God, basically. And God responds by not like giving him a justification for his suffering or anything like that, but he shows him all the patterns of the universe and the behemoth and the leviathan and all the things that are under his control, and Job leaves with perspective. And that's always been a really cool image for me, because Job is just blown away by who God is and all the things under his control. And God says, look, you think you can do better? Why don't you run the earth for a day? And Job then it comes out of it with a sense of humility, right? The fact that he knows if I'm going to hell or to heaven, it's impressive, because I haven't even died, but he knows everything. Yeah. And I think that, like, that idea of, am I going to the good place or going to the bad place? It's a little bit dangerous, right? Like I said before, like, Revelation dictates heaven coming down to us, not us going up to heaven. And in fact, there's really only one Bible verse, I would say, that talks about us going up to heaven, and it's like largely misunderstood and mistranslated, because actually it's, we're going up to welcome King Jesus down, and heaven is still coming down to us. And the ideas that we have of hell often come from, the most recent ones come from American culture. And before that, it came from Greek philosophy, and isn't really found in the Bible. And anywhere that it talks about the Bible, hell is largely metaphorical. And so it's one of those things that it's like, we don't really know what's going to happen after we die, but we know that there's in the timeline, right? We die, time passes, and then Jesus comes back to restore all things. And what happens in that middle space just isn't talked about, because the writers of the Bible hadn't experienced it, right? The only one who's experienced what death is like and has returned to talk about it, well, not the only one, but the primary one is Jesus, right? I don't know if Lazarus could speak to his experience or not. I don't know. He didn't talk about it. Or the girl that died that Jesus brought back to life, I think. Yeah. And he said she's just sleeping, I think. Am I making that up? Yeah, 12-year-old. Okay. Cool. Not making it up. The Bible is such a long book that I just have to fact check myself all the time. But yeah, this dichotomy between heaven and hell. It is largely, I think, there might be some truth to it. I think a lot of it might be metaphorical. But I think a lot of it is church baggage that's used to scare people into heaven. And that's not good, and that's not right, and that's not what Jesus was trying to teach. Something happened to my music. What's going on? Where's my music at? Come on. Why did I put it all the way over there? What is happening? Okay. Oh, you just stopped. Okay, let's try again. There we go. Okay. Okay. I have heard this Bible verse where Jesus says that he does not know the hour he will come back, only the Father. Do you think that is because while he was on earth he didn't know? Once he ascended to heaven, he did know. And God the Father told Jesus, or what do you think? It's speculative, right? Because I can't just go and ask God, right? But based off of what Jesus said and the way that Jesus acted, Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is God, right? He's God in human form. And so he's the Son of God and the Son of Man. He is both God and human at the same time. What Jesus doesn't do is access his godhood during his time on earth, right? He asks the Father to do his will. He heals through the power of God, right? But he doesn't access divine knowledge, right? He knows what he has to do because he knows who he is, but God doesn't. Jesus doesn't really do any God level or God power things. It's like bringing a gun to a knife fight and not using it. I'm getting a phone call from my wife, so I'm gonna answer this real quick. All right, sorry about that. Okay, makes a lot of sense. He did not use his divine nature while he was on earth, and that's why he said what he did. But I do think when he ascended back to heaven, he used divine knowledge and powers. He knew the hour. That's what I think. Yeah, I think that's totally fair, right? Once he came to do what he did to do, once he came to do what he came to do, and he did it, and then he ascended back up into heaven, then it's like, yeah, Jesus and God are one, right? God's spirit is still here on earth and in heaven, right? But I think our idea of what heaven is skewed. It's not a glowing place in the clouds, right? We have certain imagery that we use to describe it so that we can understand it better. But outside of that, I think we get this idea of heaven wrong and hell wrong. Like, honestly, if hell is supposed to be a place of torture or separation from God, well, just living life, I feel pretty tortured already. and I feel pretty separate from God as it is. And I have to work to hang on to his spirit. So, like, hell is kind of already here, and it's just life without Jesus, right? It sucks. I tried it. It sucks. It's difficult, and I don't like it. I like life following Jesus better. Now, I'm not saying that hell does or does not exist. It's something that I'm still working through, but I do think that there's a lot that I've found that we just get skewed because of how we've talked about it historically. Do you think when Jesus was a human, you think the time felt forever since he was inside of time, since he used to being outside of time and it works different? That's a great question. Well, he lived life as a human, right? With access to divine power from also being God. But I think because he was human, he experienced life like we do. And even just as a regular human with no divine power, I feel like time takes forever. And I'm anxious for Jesus to return. All right, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is kind of like in Doctor Strange when he traps, oh man, what is that thing called? Dormammu. Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome chat. I really appreciate you tuning in. And anyone else who's watching back, feel free to continue to comment back on the VOD. But if you want to follow along, I'll be live here doing this every Monday at 10 a.m. For the foreseeable future. I got to go take care of a family thing, unfortunately. But we'll be here every Monday and just studying the Bible and talking about it, deconstructing, reconstructing, and just chatting. But I'll leave us with these good questions. I wonder how many colors Jesus could see, like the mantis shrimp. That would be awesome if he could see all those colors. He could see demons and Satan, and to the human eye, angels are invisible to us. He was able to see it. That would be cool if Jesus had like angel and demon sight. I don't know exactly how that works, or if angels and demons just don't appear to us in the same way. Jesus was a pretty special guy. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, hey, we're going to show up because we're here to fight you. Yeah, there could be a chance that Jesus could see all of the colors in his human form. That would be cool. That'd be cool. I don't know. Lots of great questions that hopefully we can ask him someday. But, I got to get going. But take care as well. Drop a follow if you want. And hope to catch you on the next one. So, yeah. See you hopefully then.